80s were awesome. Transformers, Guns N' Roses, Ghostbusters, and that Susanna Hoffs wasn't bad either. And as for action-packed TV shows, we pretty much had it all. Every form of transportation was covered, with incredibly cool or futuristic versions of helicopters, vans, and motorcycles, all featuring in different shows and were as much the star as any of the lead characters. But there was one that stood out to me more than the others. Long before David Hasselhoff was cavorting on beaches with the likes of Pamela Anderson and Yasmin Bleeth, he was featuring alongside a co-star of a different kind, but with curves almost as fine. Kitt, the futuristic, indestructible talking car, could drive himself and perform more tricks than a hyperactive Halloween prankster. It was pretty much the coolest thing I'd ever seen as a kid. The show ingrained itself in me for life, and I've watched all 4 seasons multiple times and still dream of one day owning my very own Kitt. I guess for now this is the best I got, but this is still very cool. Thankfully, through the advent of video games, I've gone some way to bridging the gap between reality and my dream, which brings us to today's topic as we head off into the shadowy world of a man who does not exist, Knight Rider the game. And here it is, and even better, it's made by Sega. Yep, this is the classic 1970s coin-operated motorbike game that has nothing to do with the TV show, in which you move a mechanical bike along a scrolling track in order to try and achieve the best score possible. Sadly, I can't find many pictures of this gizmo, nor any footage of it in action, but I just had to briefly add this in here to clearly demonstrate that Sega were ahead of the game once again. I joke of course. But getting back to our real episode, the iteration of Knight Rider we're talking about today is actually Knight Rider Special on the PC Engine. Now there have been a whole slew of Knight Rider games over the years, and I'm sure I'll get around to those in the future too, so make sure to subscribe if this is your thing. But I thought I'd start by jumping into one that was perhaps the least accessible to me at the time. You see, here in the UK we never really had the TurboGrafx or PC Engine. I was aware of it from the various magazines of the time, but here in the UK it was all about Sega and Nintendo. A shame, because there were certainly some bangers on the machine, but it's pretty cool these days being able to now go back and dive into the entire console's catalogue that we were once deprived of. While we had Knight Rider games for the microcomputers and even an NES iteration of the show, they had a fixed in-car viewpoint, whereas in driving games I always rather liked the third-person view. So after seeing the PC Engine Knight Rider game, Knight Rider Special by Pack-In Video from 1994, I was immediately drawn to it. The game was a Japan exclusive, which was pretty weird, as Knight Rider was a pretty big deal in the US where the PC Engine had an install base, but for whatever reason it never hit their shores. Thankfully, whilst the original version features the story elements all in Japanese, you can now download an English translation patch online to put your crime-fighting exploits into perspective. So let's get into the game. Hitting the title screen, I'm liking the attempt to capture the intro to the show. And as a small aside, I also couldn't help but notice that the font here on the title screen is very reminiscent of the font used in the Knight Rider pilot on the side of the Comtron trucks. Coincidence or well-informed nod to the show? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Jumping into the game, one of the first things that stands out to me is that they've given Kitt the ability to shoot, as he's equipped with a machine gun. Now if you've seen the show, shooting is not something that Kitt ever did, save for the odd occasion where Bonnie would equip him with a laser to face his most dangerous adversaries, like Car or Goliath or something. Via power-ups, you do receive modifications where you acquire such weapons, but shooting bullets right out the gate certainly felt weird to me. I mean, this seems to be a common theme with these early games, as both the microcomputer versions and the NES game also feature a shooting function, so I guess we'll give them a pass on this one. Moving on, the aim of the game seems to be negotiating traffic, hunting down villains and then trying to take them out in a timed battle, trading blows with them. It's your usual putting right what once went wrong style shizzle. You pass from zone to zone, almost like the way Outrun moves into its different areas, except in Knight Rider you have no choice of route. Eventually, you're presented with what seems to be some type of boss battle, with Kitt pitted against another vehicle in a battle to the death. It's slightly odd, as this Lamborghini Countach seems to be matching what is supposedly the world's greatest automobile, equipped with a molecularly bonded shell that in the show could withstand most projectiles thrown at it. However here, Kitt seems a little more vulnerable than he was on the show, with each shot ebbing away at his shell until he can eventually be destroyed. I don't remember Kitt ever having to monitor its power level on the show, but I guess we're in video game world, so different rules apply, and once more, we'll have to give them a pass. The driving is a fairly standard affair, weaving in and out of traffic in an outrun style, and likewise trying to make sure you don't hit any roadside objects such as rocks or lampposts, which realistically in the show, Kitt would slice through like a hot knife through butter. Definitely irritating, but I'm feeling generous, so once again, passes abound. You do get to crash through quite a few random barricades in the opening stage, but anything more durable than that seems to have Kitt stopping in his tracks or rolling around like a pro football player. Enemies block your path at every junction, even though realistically you're only out to defeat the end of stage bosses. However, the random cars that trouble you on your way do seem to every now and then fire or drop something, so I'm guessing there are accomplices littering the roads just waiting to give you the what for. And as the game progresses, the affront to your being only escalates, as even in just stage 2 a fighter jet is deployed to drop napalm on you from above. Pretty brutal. This is all pretty easy to avoid, however I will have to admit the collision detection is pretty bad at times. The rocks I mentioned earlier at the side of the road are pretty annoying when the car clips the hitbox, even though visually it looks like you're clear of it, but I guess it's just a small quirk. But one thing that does seem very cool in the game is the ability to turbo boost. The press of a button, Kitt can become airborne, just like his televisual counterpart, and yeah, that never happened in the show. I mean, it's great they incorporated this feature, and it's fun to do and looks decent, but in terms of practicality, it's perhaps a little lacking. I mean, it does seem pretty useful to jump over some of the large trucks that block your path, and even can be quite exhilarating, but with random turns coming out of nowhere you better think twice before you use it, as you can end up in all kinds of troubles if you hit the button at the wrong moment. Fun for sure, but also a little hit and miss. But let's be real here, can you imagine my whining if this feature wasn't in here? Once again, a pass is issued. Oh, and also, shout outs to one of the briefest end bosses of all time. Yep, that was it. Dark Souls is ain't. Respect. Graphics and what we've got here is decent enough for this kind of game. The car itself looks good, with its slick and shiny exterior well represented on the PC Engine, and kudos to the devs for including the rear blackout, something annoyingly missing from the PS2 games. The scenery is perhaps a little on the barren side, and the cars scale with few frames of animation which can make it difficult to judge driving patterns, but it's something you can dial into in time. And the backgrounds do feature some pretty nice looking skies at certain points, as well as the odd tunnel for a bit of variety, so GG's for that developer dudes. No passes need to be issued on this one. Graphically, this one does okay. Music wise, there's not too much to write home about. While the game opens with a decent version of the iconic opening tune to Knight Rider, getting into the game proper presents you with some rather generic tunage that personally didn't sit too well with my ears. I mean, it's functional and keeps the pace up enough to complement the action somewhat, but perhaps it isn't in the upper echelons of great examples of the era. In fact, when I first heard it, I thought it sucked. However, as things went on, I found a nostalgic charm to it, with some of the instruments reminding me of old times I'd had on my Commodore 64 back in the day. But I'd be warned, I definitely don't think it's going to be everyone's cup of tea. However, sound effect wise, I do enjoy the futuristic hum of the Knight Industries 2000, which has that menacing futuristic vibe of being a machine decades ahead of its time. And I'm a sucker for it, so once again, get me my bag of passes cause one's coming out. So, in conclusion, Knight Rider on PC Engine is perhaps not quite the replacement for owning a real Kitt as I'd hoped it would be. I mean, my bag of passes is pretty diminished after playing this one, which perhaps isn't the best sign of an awesome game. But it is Knight Rider, So once more, I've got one last big old pass in the bottom of my bag, just waiting to bail it out at this final hurdle. I guess until I finally fulfill my dream of owning a real Kitt replica, I'll stick with the PS2 games, which, while perhaps still not amazing and were clearly produced on a budget, did actually go some way to capturing the show better than anything that came before it. But that's perhaps all for a video for another day. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching gaming guys and girls, and keep it locked here on Gaming for Ages for more retro goodness soon. Laters.